When most people think about organized crime and the mob, they usually think about gangsters like Al Capone in Chicago and Lucky Luciano in New York. The common assumption is that organized crime became most prominent in large cities. However, in the 1930s and 1940s, the city of Hot Springs, Arkansas became one of the largest centers for organized criminal activity and was at one point the largest illegal gambling operation in the nation. One would not expect this today, as Hot Springs has become a popular tourist destination due in part to its famous bathhouses and as the hometown of U.S. President Bill Clinton. Illegal gambling in Hot Springs began in the late 1800s, with a large rivalry forming between the Flynn family and the Doran family, who both attempted to illegally create gambling empires. Although it was a felony in the state of Arkansas, many of the politicians and police officers of the town made no effort to stop it, as they were bribed by the families or involved in gambling themselves, creating an enormous amount of corruption in Hot Springs. This conflict eventually resulted in the infamous Hot Springs gunfight in March of 1899. Thomas C. Toller, the chief of police in Hot Springs, was known for supporting gambling organizations such as those run by the Flynns and the Dorans. Tensions built between Toller and Bob Williams, the county sheriff, until Williams initiated a gunfight with Tom Gosley, an ally of Toller, resulting in two men being wounded and five deaths, including Bob Williams and his son Johnny. Hot Springs' influential gambling operations, corrupt local officials, and relaxing bathhouses eventually began to attract the attention of powerful gangsters. In 1935, gangster and bootlegger Oni the Killer Madden left New York to pursue a more laid-back lifestyle and also improve his health via the bathhouses and spas. Madden, who had been involved in Murder Incorporated and the Hell's Kitchen gangs of Manhattan, had created a name for himself, helping form the New York Mob, as well as being the owner of the infamous Harlem nightclub, the Cotton Club. Upon his arrival, he fell in love with and married the local postmaster's daughter. He became involved in the town's infamous gambling operations and owned the Southern Club, the largest gambling establishment in the city, now the location of Josephine Tussaud's Wax Museum. It was unofficially established early on that Hot Springs would be a place of leisure, and violence was prohibited among gangsters. Because of the massive financial success Madden had achieved, a number of other gangsters from New York and Chicago chose to migrate to Hot Springs, including Frank Costello and Meyer Lansky. The famous Chicago gangster Al Capone would retreat to Hot Springs and spend long periods of time at the Arlington Hotel in room 442. Presently, this room is known as the Al Capone Suite, and Arlington guests can stay in the same room Al Capone stayed in. Another prominent gangster who moved to Hot Springs was Lucky Luciano, who helped create the National Crime Syndicate and was the first boss of the modern-day Genovese family, one of the largest organized crime families. He fled to Hot Springs from New York after his indictment for operating a prostitution ring worth $12 million, where he was arrested and sentenced to 30 to 50 years in jail. The gambling empires established in Hot Springs eventually came to an end during the 1960s with a federal crackdown on illegal gambling. This resulted in the arrest of many Hot Springs gangsters and the decline of their gambling operations. Oni Madden, the man who established this gambling metropolis, finally died of emphysema in 1963 at the age of 73. The modern-day town of Hot Springs has very few signs it was once a haven for criminals. Although many would like to forget about the gangsters and criminal activity that once inhabited the town, it is vital that we remember the old Hot Springs due to its historical significance.